Silence is often mistaken for weakness. In a world obsessed with noise, opinions, arguments, constant updates, being quiet seems like a disadvantage. But what if I told you that silence is not a sign of retreat, but a sign of wisdom? What if the best things in life don't arrive because we chase them, but because we become ready to receive them? Think about nature. A seed doesn't scream to become a tree. It just roots itself silently into the soil. The sun doesn't force itself to shine brighter. It just rises and sets. The river doesn't argue with the rocks in its path. It flows around them. In silence, nature achieves more than we do with all our noise. We've been taught to speak up, push harder, stand out. And yes, there's a time for all of that. But before the bloom, there must be stillness. Before you act, you must observe. Before you respond, you must understand. When you stay silent, you listen more. You hear what's not being said. You begin to see patterns. You begin to notice your own impulses, your own insecurities, your own impatience. And that is where real growth begins. Not when you control the world, but when you learn to control yourself. Many of us want things: success, love, respect, purpose. But we try to force it. We rush into relationships we're not ready for. We take jobs we don't love. We speak to impress, not to express. And we wonder why life feels unbalanced. But what if we trusted timing instead of controlling outcomes? You see, silence is not about doing nothing. It's about being aligned. It's about knowing that the right opportunities, the right people, and the right answers come not when we shout, but when we're ready mentally, emotionally, spiritually. I once met a young leader who struggled with being heard in meetings. He thought he had to speak more, louder, faster. But he learned something powerful when he began to observe more and speak less. His words gained weight. People started listening not because he said more, but because he said what mattered. Silence taught him what noise couldn't. So when things get overwhelming, when life feels stuck, don't rush to fix it. Stay silent or reflect. Let the answers find you instead of forcing them into existence. Because in silence, your mind clears, your intuition sharpens, your strength builds quietly. And the most remarkable part, when you're truly ready, things begin to arrive naturally. Not because you forced them, but because you grew into the version of yourself that was finally prepared to receive them. Stay silent, stay grounded, trust the process, everything will come to you. Naturally, Fevke notes of the speech, silence is a powerful tool for self-awareness and clarity. Growth happens when we stop forcing and start aligning with the natural flow of life. Listening more than speaking can build credibility, influence, and deeper understanding. Patience and trust in timing often bring better outcomes than control and urgency. True strength and transformation begin in moments of stillness, not in chaos. Silence is often underestimated in its value, especially in a world that rewards constant expression, relentless communication, and the need to be seen and heard. But silence is not just the absence of sound. It is a deliberate space, a chosen moment, a quiet power that allows us to connect deeply with ourselves. It gives us something that the noise of the external world often steals: clarity and self-awareness. When we are silent, truly silent, not scrolling, not listening to background music, not reacting to what's around us, we begin to hear the most important voice we often ignored, our own. Self-awareness is not built in the middle of noise. It doesn't come from reacting to everyone else's opinion. It comes from reflection. It comes from looking inward, questioning your motives, recognizing your patterns, and understanding why you do what you do. That level of understanding requires space, and silence is that space. Without it, we live reactively. We wake up, we scroll, we compare, we reply, we rush. We are constantly responding to the world, rarely stopping to ask, why am I doing this? Or does this align with who I really am? Silence gives us permission to pause, and in that pause, we notice things we hadn't before. We begin to feel our emotions more clearly. We become aware of anxiety that we've been suppressing, of joy that we haven't celebrated, of frustration we never addressed. Silence surfaces truths that noise tries to bury. It's in the quiet moments, maybe late at night or early in the morning, where we start to realize what we actually think, what we truly feel, and who we're slowly becoming. In silence, our mind stops being a battlefield and becomes a mirror. It reflects back the truth, not just the image we show the world. And that truth isn't always comfortable, but it's necessary. If we don't understand ourselves, our fears, our values, our triggers, how can we ever lead others or build meaningful relationships or make wise decisions? Silence is the training ground of all those things. It teaches us discipline over our impulses, awareness over assumptions, and thoughtfulness over reaction. When people talk too much, often it's not confidence, it's a security. It's a need to prove, to be acknowledged, to feel in control. But the person who is secure, who knows themselves deeply, doesn't always need to speak. They understand that listening is a form of strength. They know that silence isn't empty. It's full of potential, full of information, full of perspective. When we are silent, we learn to read situations better. We start to hear what's not being said in conversations. We become more attuned to body language, energy shifts, and the subtleties that others miss. This is a rare kind of intelligence, and it starts with the simple practice of being quiet and aware. Silence also gives our mind a chance to process. In the constant input of our daily lives, we rarely stop to integrate what we learn or experience. We move from one thing to the next without ever understanding the meaning of what just happened. But in silence, our mind does something powerful. It connects the dots. It starts to link actions with consequences, decisions with emotions, patterns with outcomes. That's when clarity begins to emerge. That's when we start to see our life not just as a string of events, but as a story we're actively shaping. People often ask, how do I become more self-aware? The answer isn't always in another book, podcast, or course. Sometimes the answer is sitting in silence with yourself, without distractions, without performance. Just you, your breath, your thoughts. It can be uncomfortable at first. But like any practice, the more you do it, the stronger you become. You begin to trust your instincts more. You recognize when you're acting out of fear versus when you're acting out of purpose. And that in itself is the foundation of emotional intelligence. True self-awareness is a result of consistent reflection, and reflection thrives in silence. It requires the courage to face yourself honestly and the discipline to choose stillness over stimulation. It's not easy, but it's transformative. Because once you start to truly understand yourself, your choices change. Your relationships shift, your goals become clearer, and your life starts to align not by chance, but by conscious design. And it all begins with a simple decision to be silent, to listen within, and to pay attention to what you discover there. Growth is not always about effort, speed, or noise. So much of what we understand about success and progress today is rooted in the belief that we must constantly push, control, or chase outcomes. We are told to be aggressive with our goals, to go get it, to make it happen. But there is another way, one that is quieter, slower, and more powerful in the long run. It is the way of alignment, of stepping into rhythm with life rather than trying to bend it to our will. When we stop forcing and start aligning, we create the conditions where real, meaningful growth can happen naturally. There is a difference between chasing something and attracting it. When we chase something, we operate from a sense of lack, from fear that if we don't run hard enough, we'll never get what we want. But when we focus on becoming the person who is ready for what we desire, we shift from desperation to preparation. That shift is subtle, but it changes everything. Growth doesn't come because we demand it. It comes because we are becoming the version of ourselves that is capable of holding it. Take the example of someone who desperately wants a meaningful relationship. They go out, they talk to people, they try to impress, they mold themselves to what others want. But despite all the effort, nothing feels genuine. Why? Because they are trying to force something before they've done the inner work to become ready for it. When that same person stops chasing, turns inward, works on self-respect, emotional regulation, and purpose, they start to track what they once ran after. Not because the world changed, but because they did. Alignment means you stop running toward things and start creating a life where those things naturally flow to you. This principle applies to every area of life, career, relationships, peace of mind. When we're out of alignment, we experience resistance. Things feel hard, confusing, and draining. We overthink, we burn out, we repeat patterns. But when we are in alignment, even challenges feel purposeful. We experience flow. We find ourselves meeting the right people at the right time, noticing opportunities we would have otherwise missed. That's not luck, it's readiness. It's the outcome of growing in a direction that matches the life we're meant to lead. Forcing growth is like trying to make a flower bloom before it's time. You can pull the petals open, but all you'll do is damage them. The flower blooms not because it tries harder, but because it has been given the right environment, sunlight, water, soil, and time. The same goes for we need the right mental environment to grow, reflection, patience, honesty, and rest. We often glorify hustle, but hustle without awareness leads to burnout. On the other hand, action rooted in alignment leads to fulfillment. There is power in letting go of control, not in giving up, but in surrendering the need to manipulate every outcome. This surrender doesn't mean laziness, it means maturity. It means understanding that life has its own timing and your job is not to rush it, but to prepare for it. It means putting in the work to evolve, not just externally, but internally. And when the internal shifts, the external often follows. Growth also requires that we stop measuring ourselves by artificial timelines. Someone else's progress is not your competition. Their pace is not your standard. When we force ourselves to keep up with others, we ignore the fact that we each have a unique path. Alignment means you trust your own timing. It means you're not late, you're learning. You're not behind, you're being shaped. It takes humility to accept where you are and strength to trust that you are still on your way. In the silence, when you stop forcing things, something interesting happens. You begin to see with clarity. You begin to notice where you've been out of sync with your values, where you've compromised your integrity to please others or meet shallow goals. That awareness becomes the starting point for realignment. And when you begin to operate from alignment, you make decisions differently. You no longer say yes out of fear or no out of ego. You move from a place of calm confidence, and that energy changes what you attract into your life. Letting go of the need to force allows space for transformation to happen naturally. You don't have to beg for opportunities or chase people or overthink every choice. You just have to become still enough, clear enough, and honest enough with yourself to see what path feels right, and then walk it, not because someone told you to, but because it feels like yours. That is the path of alignment. That is where growth doesn't just happen, it unfolds. Listening more than speaking is a practice that not only deepens our understanding, but also transforms the way others perceive and respond to us. In today's fast-paced, competitive world, where everyone seems eager to share their opinion, make their voice heard, and be recognized. The ability to listen has become a rare and powerful skill. But real listening, intentional, focused, and quiet listening, is not just about hearing someone's words. It's about absorbing their meaning, observing their emotions, and understanding the message beneath the surface. This kind of listening builds trust, credibility, and influence in ways that talking never can. When we speak too often or too quickly, we usually operate from a place of wanting to be understood, validated, or even admired. But in doing so, we often miss the depth of what others are trying to communicate. Listening first reverses this dynamic. It shows people that their thoughts matter, that you respect their perspective, and that you are not rushing to make everything about yourself. That subtle shift opens doors. It creates psychological safety. People begin to relax around you, to open up, to trust you, not because you said all the right things, but because you gave them space to be seen and heard. It is easy to assume that leadership or influence comes from having the best ideas or the loudest voice, but often it comes from the person who listens and makes others feel valued. In meetings, the person who listens deeply and then speaks with precision often commands more attention than the one who dominates the entire conversation. Their words carry more weight because they are thoughtful, not reactive. That thoughtfulness is built in silence, in the moments of listening and processing before speaking. Listening also sharpens our awareness. When we pause and truly pay attention to what someone is saying, beyond just the words, we begin to pick up on tone, pace, hesitation, and emotion. We notice what they are avoiding, what they emphasize, and what matters to them. That level of insight can only come through stillness. It is in silence that you observe the emotional undercurrents that guide people's behavior. And when you learn to read those signals, you respond with wisdom instead of impulse. There is also a deeper benefit. Listening teaches us to manage our own ego. When we choose not to interrupt or dominate, we are training ourselves in humility. We are acknowledging that we don't always have to be right or first or loud. We are learning patience. And in that patience, we gain clarity, not just about others, but about ourselves. We start to become aware of our own patterns. When we feel the urge to speak, to impress, to correct, and that awareness is the first step toward emotional mastery. Listening also protects relationships. Many conflicts, whether personal or professional, arise from misunderstandings, people feeling dismissed, ignored, or misinterpreted. When we listen more and speak less, we reduce the chances of miscommunication. We make people feel safe to share their truth. And in doing so, we foster stronger, more authentic connections. This is especially true in leadership. A leader who listens earns loyalty. A partner who listens earns intimacy. A friend who listens earns trust. These are not small outcomes. They are the foundation of everything meaningful. Even in moments of disagreement, listening disarms tension. When you listen, you show that you're not just waiting to argue or defend your point. You're demonstrating that you are open to understanding, even if you don't agree. That posture of curiosity invites collaboration. It turns conflict into conversation and often leads to solutions that arguing never would have revealed. On a personal level, listening helps us understand ourselves better too. When we make space for others to talk, we get to reflect on our own assumptions. We challenge our biases. We hear stories that stretch our perspective. In silence, we don't just absorb new information. We allow it to reshape how we think, lead, and live. This quiet practice becomes a mirror that reflects not only who others are, but who we are becoming. The irony is that in choosing to listen, we often end up being heard more. Because people begin to seek out our voice, not because it's loud, but because it's intentional. They value our perspective because they know it comes from observation, not from the need to fill silence. Our influence grows not by force, but by the quiet strength of our presence. Listening is not weakness, is one of the most disciplined and impactful choices we can make. It is the foundation of understanding, the beginning of wisdom, and the bridge between knowing and connecting. Patience and trust in timing often bring better outcomes than control and urgency. This idea challenges much of what we're taught in modern life. We're constantly told that if we want something, we have to act fast, chase it, and never stop moving. While action and ambition have their place, the truth is that not everything in life responds to speed. Some things unfold with time, and the more we try to force them, the more we delay or damage the outcome. There's a rhythm to life, and when we learn to trust that rhythm instead of trying to rush it, we often find that things fall into place more naturally and with less effort. It's easy to get frustrated when things don't happen on our schedule. Whether it's a job we didn't get, a relationship that didn't work out, or a goal that feels out of reach, the delay can feel like failure. But not every delay is denial. Sometimes it's preparation. That's not only about achieving, it's about becoming. And becoming takes time. You can't rush character development. You can't force maturity. You can't fast track experience. The seasons of waiting are often where the most important growth happens. They teach us resilience, reflection, and the ability to navigate uncertainty without losing ourselves. Control often feels more comfortable than patience. When we control, we feel powerful, like we're doing something. But control is often just fear wearing a disguise. It's fear that if we don't hold everything tightly, we'll lose it. It's fear that if we don't push, nothing will happen. But in trying to control everything, we end up creating unnecessary pressure, stress, and anxiety. We lose the ability to enjoy the present moment because we're so focused on making the future happen faster. Patience, on the other hand, doesn't mean doing nothing. It means doing what you can and then letting go of what you can't. It means working hard, but also knowing when to pause. It means setting intentions without demanding immediate results. It's the ability to hold a vision in your heart and still live with peace in the present. That kind of patience isn't passive, it's powerful. It shows that you trust yourself, that you believe in the timing of your journey, and that you're not afraid to wait for what's right instead of settling for what's easy or quick. There are countless stories of people who waited for years before they saw results. Artists who struggled in obscurity. Entrepreneurs who failed multiple times before they succeeded. People who thought they missed their chance, only to find that their time was still ahead of them. What these stories have in common is not just perseverance, but timing. They didn't quit during the quiet seasons. They didn't force something that wasn't ready. They stayed committed without becoming impatient, and because of that, when their moment came, they were prepared to step into it fully. There is also wisdom in knowing that sometimes not getting what you want immediately is a blessing. When things come too quickly, we're often not ready for them. We might lack the emotional maturity, the skills, or the perspective to handle them well. Timing is not just about the world being ready for you. It's about you being ready for the world. When we rush into things before we're equipped, we often damage the very thing we wanted. But when we arrive with readiness, we can sustain the success, the relationship, or the opportunity. That's the difference between short-term wins and long-term growth. Trusting in timing also requires faith. Faith that life is not random and that things are unfolding for your good, even if you can't see it yet. It's hard to believe that when you're in the middle of uncertainty. It's difficult when everyone else seems to be moving ahead while you feel stuck. But just because you can't see progress doesn't mean it isn't happening. Sometimes the most important changes are taking place beneath the surface, preparing the foundation for something bigger. This mindset of patience and trust doesn't remove the struggle, but it changes your relationship with it. You stop seeing delays as enemies and start seeing them as teachers. You stop trying to control every variable and start learning how to flow with what is. And in that space, you begin to experience peace, not because everything is perfect, but because you've learned to let go of the illusion that you must force everything into place. When you look back on your life, the moments you'll be most grateful for might not be the ones that went exactly as planned, but the ones that didn't and still led you to something better. That's what patience and timing do. They guide you quietly, steadily, and often without your awareness toward the life that fits you best. Not the one you had to chase, but the one that was meant for you all along. True strength and transformation begin in moments of stillness, not in chaos. It's a difficult idea to accept in a culture that celebrates constant movement, hustle, and loud success. We are conditioned to believe that the more we do, the more we become. We glorify business, thinking that transformation happens in the storm, in the dramatic moments, in the big decisions, in the relentless chase. But real change, the kind that reshapes who you are at your core, often begins quietly. It begins when everything goes silent and you're left with nothing but yourself, your thoughts, and the truth you can't ignore. Stillness is not the absence of activity, it's the presence of awareness. When you are still, you are not escaping the world, you are finally facing it. More importantly, you are facing yourself. And that confrontation is where transformation starts. It is in stillness that you begin to notice your habits, your thoughts, and your emotions without distraction. You see the stories you tell yourself, the fears that control you, the pain you haven't healed from. These realizations don't arrive in the middle of noise. They come when everything slows down, when the world quiets and your inner voice becomes louder than your outer environment. Strength is not always loud. It's not always in the form of pushing through pain or showing up no matter what. Sometimes strength is knowing when to pause. Sometimes it's in choosing not to react. It's in the quiet decision to walk away from what no longer serves you. It's in the restraint of not proving yourself to people who don't understand you. These silent acts of courage are often invisible to the world, but they are the ones that build you from the inside out. Transformation isn't about becoming someone different overnight. It's about slowly shedding the layers of who you are not. That process is uncomfortable. And that's why most people avoid stillness, because in stillness, there is no escape. There is no distraction to hide behind. You can't run from your thoughts. You have to face the fear, the disappointment, the shame, the confusion, and then decide what to do with them. This is where strength is forged, not in pretending to have it all together, but in sitting with the parts of yourself you want to avoid and choosing to grow through them instead of around them. Stillness also teaches us discipline. In a world that constantly pulls at our attention, the choice to be still is an act of resistance. It's a declaration that not everything deserves your energy. It's the wisdom to know that reacting to every situation, engaging in every argument, or chasing every opportunity is not a sign of strength. It's often a sign of restlessness. Strength is the ability to pause, observe, and choose wisely. And that ability is built not in the chaos of doing, but in the quiet of being. There's a certain kind of clarity that only comes when you step back from the noise. In stillness, you begin to see situations for what they are, not what you fear they might be. You stop trying to control outcomes and start focusing on what you can actually influence: your mindset, your actions, your responses. And with that clarity comes power, the power to shift your perspective, to rewrite your story, To change direction with purpose instead of panic. Many people associate transformation with some breakthrough moment, a major decision, a painful ending, a bold leap. But often, the most profound shifts happen gradually in quiet moments of realization. It's when you're alone thinking deeply. It's when you choose reflection over reaction. It's when you notice that you're no longer triggered by what used to bother you. That's when you know change has occurred. Not because you made a loud announcement, but because you feel different on the inside. And that kind of transformation lasts. Stillness also connects you to something bigger than yourself. When you slow down enough to listen to nature, to your breath, to the still voice within, you begin to realize that you're not as alone or as lost as you think. There's a rhythm to life, a timing that's not always visible. And stillness is how you align yourself with it. You begin to trust the process, not because it's easy, but because you've learned to anchor yourself in something deeper than fear or impulse. Strength isn't always proven through force. It's often revealed through presence, the ability to stay grounded in the middle of uncertainty, to stay calm when others panic, to remain committed when nothing seems to be moving. And that kind of strength can't be faked. It has to be cultivated in silence, through reflection, through patience, through deep internal work. It's not built in the spotlight. It's built in the shadows, in the still, unseen spaces where your character is shaped, your values are tested, and your resilience is born. The power of silence is not in what it hides, but in what it reveals. In a world that demands constant noise, movement, and validation, choosing to stay silent is a radical act of strength. It's in that silence that we begin to hear ourselves, align with our purpose, and grow in ways that chasing, controlling, and forcing never allow. When we listen more than we speak, we build deeper connections and gain clearer insight. When we stop pushing and start trusting the timing of our lives, we discover that the things meant for us often arrive without struggle. And when we embrace stillness, we uncover a well of inner strength that transforms us quietly but profoundly. So stay silent, not out of fear, but out of wisdom. Because everything you are seeking, everything you're trying so hard to find, is already on its way to you. Not through noise, not through chaos, but through patience, presence, and peace. Let it come to you naturally.